Hi, everyone. Dr. Maria Sampalis. Thank you for watching the Amazing Women in Optometry podcast today. I am so psyched to have Dr. Essence Johnson on the podcast today. She is an amazing woman in optometry, has done so much for the profession, so much for women in optometry, so much for minorities in optometry. I am so honored to call you my colleague and have you on the podcast today. And from the song Roar, I mean, you really did roar this year in 2022 last year.
Well, thank you for having me. And I love, that you chose to play that song. That is like one of my little anthems and mantras too. And I did. I feel like especially in 2022, it was a very big and impactful year. But like all things, I like to say, these moments normally take at least 10 years. So what we're seeing is all the hard work from all the time before and finally seeing like just the journey really coming to fruition. And it's been really nice to share it with the world essentially.
Of course, yeah. I've been watching you. I've been admiring you. I talked to a lot of optometrists, and I was like, she is an upcoming female, like in the industry, strong about the purpose, about doing what's right. I was like, I got to have her on. And for those of you that don't know her, if you're under a rock this last couple of years, she is a HBCU MAID, residency trained community and correctional health optometrist, graduated from Pennsylvania College of Optometry Salis, and completed a residency of ocular disease and Omni Eye Care Services in Atlanta. She's really passionate about improving patients' health, achieving health equity among underrepresented populations, and executive director for Black Eye Care Perspective, and just really changing eye care 1% at a time through advocacy and action and accountability. Is not afraid to voice her opinion for the better good of that community. And in 2022, Optical Women Associate, Vision Monday optical influencer.
Yes.
Eye Care Business Award. What was the other ones? I'm sorry.
We got a Theo Award in mentorship. We were in the Rising Star category for most influential women in optical, received a President's Medal along with my great friends and colleagues at our alma mater, the Pennsylvania College of Optometry, and was recently even recognized kind of locally to being the top healthcare worker for the work that we're doing with Black Eye Care Perspective.
Yeah, that was an amazing year, 2022. Everyone recognized your efforts and all the stuff that you've done over the years, and just really, bring DEI to optometry and a voice also to females in the industry too. And I think that's very important because you talk about things that a lot of women don't talk about in public. Maybe it's behind closed doors, and I think bringing that to light is important. So let's talk about your journey in optometry and, how you got here.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite story that I love to tell people is, you always ask, like, did you always know you wanted to be an optometrist? And of course, on those little pieces of art that you bring home to your parents is always like, I wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer type of thing. But I was really leaning towards being a lawyer. Back then, I was like, okay, to be a lawyer, you would be the president of the United States. And now I kind of like laugh at that. Like, do I really want to be the president of the United States in this time? But my plan, yes, my plan was to be a lawyer. And then one day I remember telling my maternal grandmother that, and her response was, Essence, you will go to hell for lying. And that just struck every chord. It really was like, I don't want to go to hell. And I definitely don't want my grandmother not liking me for it. So it was one of those things like, man, I think I need to find another profession, like the thing I used to doodle about and draw about and dream about since a young child. My grandmother kind of put a halt to that somewhere in like middle school and high school. And then our school had a career day. And I remember, or at least in my head, the way that the memory goes is that I knew there was a room with a lawyer. And so I went into that room. But in my mind, that room was like so dark. It was so boring. There was a man, no offense, but he was there with all these tall books, history books on top of that. I'm such a STEM girl. I was like, history books. this dark room, this man with, I was like, no, maybe my grandmother's right. Maybe I do not want to be a lawyer. Then there was another room that I went into, and maybe they were like, come to the healthcare room. And for really the first time ever, even though I do wear glasses and my best friend's dad was my family optometrist, I just went as, part of my healthcare. I didn't really think of it as a future career. But I walked into the other room, and it was like bright white. There's a lady, like an angel in her white coat, and she's like, I'm an optometrist. And I was like, wow, like, this is amazing. And she told us all about it. She told us how she is a mom, she's able to work, she's helping patients and, treating conditions. And I think really the piece next to seeing her was just that invitation to be like, if anytime you're interested, I'm a resource, or come to my practice. And she worked in a hospital setting. And so kind of like from there, I am, a very self-learned, self-taught, ambitious kind of person. So if there's something that I see and put my mind to, I'm going to, research it, learn about it, figure it out. And I'm originally from Southern California, and we happen to have an optometry school there. And before it changed its name, I was always on, it seemed like always on the campus of the Southern California College of Optometry. I swear somewhere in this memory, I even was doing like SAT prep on their campus, or they had opportunities to come. And then in high school, we could do a senior project, and I chose to do mine on something in the optometry field. I researched strabismus. My dad had got LASIK surgery that year. I documented and chronicled his whole process and procedure and watched it. And I was really just sold. Like at that point, it was all things optometry. So when I went into undergrad, when I went to Prairie View, I knew that's what I wanted to do. So everything that I learned or did or volunteered or participated in was to be on the path to be an optometrist. And during that time, there was a lot of summer programs to go to. I was in Houston area, so we would volunteer with Prevent Blindness. So it was just like full steam ahead. I had tunnel vision. Optometry was going to be, my career of choice. And, it all worked out for the better. I was able to graduate and get accepted and go to the Pennsylvania College of Optometry, and kind of now, like, the rest is history, but also making history. So I'm very happy that this career path found me, and I was able to choose it.
Maybe it was chosen for you, right? So maybe you weren't supposed to be a lawyer, you're supposed to be something else. You had a big purpose, right? Tell
Yeah.
us about, being a woman in optometry. And I mean, I've talked about it on this podcast many times. It's still difficult for females in optometry. So let's talk about that.
Well, I would say I was very fortunate that my early experiences of optometry were with a lot of female optometrists and Black female optometrists. Like, coincidentally, when I think of from high school who I shadowed when I was an undergrad, Dr. Forte worked at the Walmart there, and I was an optician. So my early just path were around so many women in optometry. But I don't really think until you get into optometry school, or like when you go to certain schools, they show all their graduates, and you just see, where women kind of started becoming a thing, or where even, people of color started being a thing. And it really wasn't something that, I realized until I was in optometry school. But then, times have changed. And even I was in a class that was predominantly female, which, really didn't affect the way that I learned or anything different. But it is very interesting to be a part of the shift. And now that, not only am I a woman in optometry, but you add on, being a spouse and now being that mom. And you hear us a lot of times saying, being a mom optometrist. And that's why we choose optometry, because of that flexibility. You really start seeing sometimes the disparities, but also part the struggles, but also the opportunities that it is to not always have to choose, but it is a balancing act. And there are times where sometimes even in this profession, it's not as, I would say, flexible or accepting, of you wearing multiple hats. hats, or there are times sometimes the questions are like, so I remember I went to an interview once for a practice and they asked me, you know, what are you going to do if your kids get sick? And I'm like, I'm gonna take care of my sick child, but they were like, they're not gonna pay, for that day, or I'm gonna have to work double to make it up, or things like that. And it's just kind of interesting to see that, like, typically they don't ever ask, the father or the husbands those types of questions, but to be asked something like that, even in an interview, it was definitely off-putting, but even a bit of a shock that there weren't accommodations or just the considerations to be made, and seeing sometimes motherhood as a hindrance, whether rather than just something that is a part of us and one of the many hats that we wear and the many things that we juggle day to day.
No, you're right. I did a lecture on gender inequalities in optometry. I did a lot of research just to back everything up, and there's a lot of great information out there. AOA has some things, and Women in Optometry magazine, and I put all that stuff together. And the conversations usually are like that. And I've experienced things like that when I go either to purchase a practice. Can you handle this? Your kids are young. I had a corporate practice, and can you handle this? Well, I mean, maybe not take on a busier location or multiple subleases because you have young kids, and they unfortunately, some of those biases define some optometrists in our industry. And I've seen some leadership gaps in optometry, and I think the term sponsor is someone that is a leader in a position, and then can also advocate for you, right? Not just a mentor. We don't need just mentors. We need sponsors for that next level to say, yeah, I've been in the same position as Maria. I had a leadership position at this company. I was able to balance it. I have staff, husband support. I have family support, and you're not a bad mom if you have a good position, if you're seeing your travel. It takes they say it takes a whole tribe to raise a family, and it's not just the woman's position to raise kids. We're in 2022, 23 now. And I think it's just that mindset too. But if we don't have like representation that kind of can speak for us, give us a voice for people in making decisions for us, unfortunately, it doesn't help optometry for females either, because DEI is females in optometry as well, and we don't talk a lot about that. And I think it's because people making decisions on these things aren't females.
Well, let me tell you a funny story about that and how representation truly matters. So I have a daughter, she is 6, and I have a son, he's 4. And our friends, they have kids around the same age, and I watch how they play. Kids love to play house. And I think it's very empowering, especially when my husband is a school teacher, I'm, the doctor, and our kids have that professional reference. I have other friends, there are other professionals and different things. So they see, working parents, and, especially during the pandemic, they know we're always on a meeting or we're on a Zoom or things like that. But I observed one day how they play, and I was with one of my girlfriends, and I said, do you see this? Do you see how our daughters, the boys, they're always honeys and they're always at home with the kids, but the moms, they're always out going to work. And I said, it's just very empowering, though, to see that. I know some people will be like, oh, but it's amazing, though, that even at that young, they pick up on those types of differences, and they're emulating, what you're representing. And it really just gives me a sense of pride for not just my daughter, but my son too, to see, women that can, travel for work or be on meetings, or, have doctor in their title and things like that. And to see already at this young age, that like mommies can go to work too and daddies can stay at home and watch the kids or things like that. So I just thought that, like, it is just really just a full circle, type of moment. And even to like what you were saying about leadership, even if it's not being, related to whether you're a mom or if you're married, there's a lot of, the age bias. I remember first starting out just in practice with patients, people could not believe I was the doctor, or sometimes they would inappropriately use the term like, are you the help, or are you doing this? And when I was young, I always found it very interesting sometimes that they would ask me how old I am. They would ask me if I had kids. Then they would ask me if I was married. And I was like, that, is a very presumptuous, order of questioning. But I have found that as like I've matured in things in the profession, there is less of, and maybe it's not less, maybe I just know how to handle it better. Like now when they're
You're
like,
more confident. You're more
yeah, you look young. And I'm just like, yeah, I probably wasn't even born when you started doing this. Or, yeah, I'm like Doogie Howser, or, I'm a child genius kind of things. And really getting them on track, or really showing them. I've had patients now in the community health setting that there was a sense of pride because I switched to working to a practice that was predominantly, Black and Hispanic. And so instead of saying like, oh, you're young as kind of a quip, it was more like, wow, and I have more patients that sometimes in the room, they'll call, their niece or their granddaughter or their child and be like, you need to see this. Like, this is something that you can do too. So I have definitely seen the shift from like the start of my practicing time when I was younger to now that I'm older, even how patients, receive me and perceive me. But then it's still like that other piece that like, I'm not still a young OD, but what do we do when you're like a middle age,
Yeah,
OD?
we're young, we're young.
Yeah, we're trying to transition over, and I'm definitely feeling that difference where, we're now getting to be in that spot where we're the generation, we're the change makers, we're the ones that the students are shadowing now. We're in, that position to be the sponsor. And that has been a very interesting shift to navigate. And it's the part that excites me the most.
No, yeah, you're right. I've had some women towards the end of their career on the podcast, and I always hear when I'll talk to some people in the industry, they'll say, "Well, your kid's okay. Like you work a lot, you do." But I'll interview these females are super successful, have paved the road over the years, make it easier for me to do what I want to do in the industry. And I say, "Hey, how's your kid?" Oh, they're doctors, lawyers. They're successful. They're out. They got to get everything. So it's what they see, right? It's what you're saying. So for anyone listening to this podcast, if you want to do something, you can do it. You don't need to take time because, because you have kids. If you want to, you whatever you want to do, whatever your passion is. But you don't take on because other people are telling you this. Take it from people that have gone through it, that want to do it, and have done it. I wasn't working all these hours before, but I was home. But I had a plan. I knew what to do, what I wanted to do. And what I could do, I would do, but you have to be able to say no and not get burnt out. So I want to bring into that the next thing. There's a lot of females that take on a lot because they're the caregiver. They have to take care of their kids. We have to take hold of the household. Sometimes, we have to take more responsibility, unfortunately, in the house compared to maybe our husbands or spouses. Give us some insight on that and how you've navigated over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I think like a majority of us, to be a doctor, there's that type A part of you. And then I think, there's the people who want to lead, and it's the people who kind of, take a few steps back. And I think the biggest thing is, it's cliche. People tell it to you all the time. I'm still learning it. It's that power of no, of saying it. And I started saying it more, and it is actually more empowering than frightening. And you can really focus a little bit better. Because I do feel that, especially just any type of leader, but especially when you are a strong woman and people see that, a lot of opportunities come your way. But knowing that, yes, you can do anything, but you don't have to do everything. And knowing sometimes, people come to you because they love your execution. They love the way that you eloquently can communicate that. They love, just that get done mentality. And sometimes it's the blessing and the curse, because so much gets piled on because you have such a commanding presence and people love the way that you do things. But you have to really be mindful of your capacity, really being mindful of what is on your plate, really being mindful of, who you're giving your time and attention to. It's very easily to, sometimes inadvertently get very consumed with work and then not having a lot to give when you get back home. So definitely the pandemic has helped me reshift those priorities and see how much I enjoy, being home and seeing, especially since my kids are younger, the opportunities you want to be a part of. I worked full time all the time, and was getting into the habit. Many of us have help, picking up the kids or taking them, and then you're really not seeing them. And when I got to take like a step back from just practicing so much, it was the little things like being able to go to lunch with my daughter or to volunteer for their classes. And that really helped me to say, I want to take a different approach in this season. It doesn't have to be the for always, but for right now, people always say cherish these moments because once they grow up, you can't get them back. So really looking at, what am I giving my time to? How much of it am I giving to? And is it costing me, the time to love on myself or to love on my family, or to do kind of the non-work things that are important to me?
Yeah, that's very important. Self-care is very important. You take care of yourself, then you could take care of others like you're supposed to. And then we take care of our patients. It is easy, I think, in optometry, unfortunately, to get burnt out quickly because we have to see a lot of patients from a practice management standpoint with all the changes with insurance and things like that. But also, too, I think not that we have a lot of patient complaints, but like other professions per se, usually it's more health a routine we see too. But you get those patients that are mostly like, hey, I can't see, I can't do this, I can blur it, whatever the case is. So it's kind of just kind of channeling that and working through it. Just so when you leave at 4 or 5 o'clock, whatever it is, you're ready for your, for the people that matter the most, right, in the house, and that you're developing them, right, that you're helping them because you've mentored a lot of optometrists, which is something that you do because you want to, right? You don't do, and a lot of things that you've done in the industry has not been for personal gain. It's been for the purpose, for the mission, to help others, to raise the profession forward. So again, I want to reiterate this because I think it's so important. It's not for personal gain, it's for the purpose, for the people, to bring optometry forward. And I think that's what differentiates you as an amazing woman in optometry, because it's about elevating everyone, right? Of elevating the profession. Elevate. So you've done that. I've seen it. I think it's amazing. And I think that you will continue to be a force in optometry, a woman in optometry, because you do it because you care, you want to. And that's what is will set you apart and bring you forward, I think. And other people that do things just for personal gain, I mean, it's just short-lived. I've seen it, I think. And I think that, we'll look back and as older optometrists, and Dr. Johnson will be up there. So, and for your passion you've shown this, you've done things with Black eye care perspective. Kind of tell us about that impact, because you guys were doing things even before DEI was a thing in the world.
Yeah, I will say, one, thank you, of course. And when I just reflect on, what we're doing with Black Eye Care perspective, and you really hit it on the head. One, what I love about, Dr. Glover and Cleaver and Ramsey and Humes and the work that we're doing with our whole, eye care community. is that there is no, selfish ambition or vain conceit. That's one of my favorite scriptures. But also it's truly purposeful work, but it's essentially like our calling. I had just told Dr. Cleaver the other day, I said, just when you think that, your purpose was to become an optometrist, what is being revealed to us, our purpose was to bring more people into optometry. And I think that that is like a very powerful thing once you know like what your message is as a person. And there's a lot of things, sometimes people see and they're like, oh, it was maybe happenstance or coincidence or, maybe even a little opportunistic. But I am the kind of person, even after all these years, I have my personal statement from optometry school. And it's very interesting to see that even that 20 something year old girl knew that I wanted to increase the representation of more women in optometry and the representation of optometry in healthcare. That was the takeaway that I got when I was shadowing and engaging myself into the community. And for many of years, like my sisters can be a testament to it, like there's always been this part inside of me that it's like, how can, how can I do more for the profession? Or, one of my like kind of cringe statements is where you hear a lot of people saying, optometry is saturated. If optometry was saturated, we wouldn't have wait lists. Now, before the pandemic, my wait list was already about 6 months to a year out. Because of the pandemic, it's years long now that if we were I think optometry is very concentrated in certain areas, but it's not saturated to the point where we don't need more doctors. The real key part of it is that diversity piece. We need more doctors to practice in different areas, in different modes. It is very saturated, maybe from a corporate perspective or a private practice perspective, but even more so now, more than ever, optometrists can practice in jails and hospitals and clinics, on vans, in all of these different modes of practices. And what I've seen in community health was how I was seeing a lot of patients that had never seen a doctor before, and that I was their first time ever seeing a doctor. And then even bonus points that you're seeing a female doctor and a female doctor of color. So that really lends a lot of purpose to the work that we're doing with Black Eye Care Perspective, because essentially we need more doctors. It is said at our conferences, and there's facts and statistics that show that over the next 10 years, we aren't going to have enough, optometrists to service the population, to service the community, to service not just people of color. All people would be affected by, not being able to see an eye care provider. And then as we see new schools pop up, people feel very threatened, but we need more schools in order to educate more people to become doctors. And what we're doing in Black Eye Care Perspective is that we are intentionally ensuring that, we get more doctors of color, more students of color that are interested in becoming doctors into our pipeline to attend one of these many optometry schools and to become an optometrist, and to help, us fill in those gaps of eye care so that we're able to service the nation, which is what our oath charges us to do, to be able to provide care to people of all demographics, regardless of any other, circumstances, be it skin color or location or financial, that we need to do something about it. And what really charged us to do more about that, of course, is being idle in the pandemic, not being able to practice, seeing all the racial and social unrest and injustices that were happening, hearing comments in all industries that there aren't any qualified, Black people. That's why we don't have, a lot of people of color in particular in certain positions. And then, just that want to really do something about it, because when we look back on past reports, the numbers hadn't changed much since we started, school a decade ago. And now we're finally seeing 1% change because we are getting people excited about optometry again, aware about optometry again, and getting students and ensuring that they're not getting discouraged or dissuaded on the journey. And that's been a lot of the things that we've seen, that there are students interested, but it takes that one comment, like your grandmother
Yes.
telling you you're going to go to hell, and then your path has changed. And we're trying to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Of course, yeah, but it's also discouraging from other people that might not be familiar with certain cultures, things like that. I had Dr. Stephanie Brown on the podcast too. She's one of the first Black females in optometry. She's done a lot for the industry. She's given back, philanthropy, a lot of great things. You, like her, like, are givers, right? You give to make the better good and do that. And when she was on the podcast, it was eye-opening to me, and it's great to talk about these things because maybe it'll put some people in their place to be like, I need, they got voices now. People have voices. I'm not
Yeah.
going to say, and then, but it also educates people, be like, that's not right, to do that. And unfortunately, if people have heard, someone discourage you or on something, just ignore them, just keep going. I mean, it's just what you find, what your path is, what you want to do. And, Steve Jobs had a quote saying, the people that think, the crazy people think they can change the world actually do, right? With Black Eye Care perspective, you guys have changed optometry and how, diversity is talked about. It wasn't talked about before. So tell us why diversity is so important for future generations, for like mentorship, sponsorships, and a lot more beyond.
I think, one, it is important for us to really ensure that our world, our population, is getting the eye care that they need. I think it's important because even when I look at, like, my kids going to school, their classroom is very diverse. They may have classmates with two dads or two moms or from a multiracial background, and that is what our future is going to look like. And we should be more inclusive of creating an environment in the school systems, in our workplaces, in our world, that is accepting of the change that is going to happen, whether we want it to or not. I think diversity is, yes, getting people of different cultures and backgrounds into the profession. I think that it is also teaching, having more of our continuing education classes or, podcasts and workshops where we are learning how to evolve with this change. I mean, it is true that it's different. It's very, different. And especially in optometry, it was seen, from one set of eyes, so to speak, for so very long. And now, women are coming in. And the same thing that's happening with women, which isn't a bad thing, is going to happen with people from other backgrounds. And we have to start building within our minds and then within our environments a place of inclusivity to help bring all people in and not push them out,
Mhm.
and to do that with our colleagues, but also just with our patients, and then also with our actions.
Yeah.
Um, because at the end
It's,
of the day, they do say diverse teams perform better than non-diverse teams.
they
So
do. They do. And, females are important, diverse cultures, important. I've been a strong advocate in the industry just, for females over the years, but also for corporate optometrists. Unfortunately, some have been not welcome in certain things, unfortunately, in the industry, and trying to bring that forward because, we're all in this together. We all want to care for our patients, and, the four walls that we work in doesn't matter. But anybody, I think, can be a leader. I think, a lot. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have a position. People will follow you if you're genuine, if you're for a purpose. You're looking to help other people. You develop other leaders. That's a real leader. And tell us about how you became a leader in what you did for people doctors that want to be a leader in the industry, whether it's having a practice, maybe it's joining the AOA leadership, maybe it's other things, the speaker in the industry, things like that, and leadership. Because I think there's a lot of things that people can measure. It could be grades, it could be, income, whatever it is, but I think you can't measure heart, right? And I think that's what really, if you have the big heart, you have the determination, you can be whatever you want to be and you can change the industry and just keep going, right? So tell us about how what your path has been on that.
I definitely think when it comes to leadership, it is independent of a title or a position.
That's right. Can you hear me?
Yes, I think I'm
You
back.
got cut off a little bit. Tell us about your leadership.
So when it comes to leadership, I believe that it's independent of the title and the position. A lot of people wait to be named like the president or the chair to define their leadership. And I have always been the person, and I'm in a sorority, and I tell them all the time, like, I don't need to be the president. I do not need to be the treasurer. I really don't want the title. I will do the work regardless. I really sometimes like being more behind the scenes and orchestrating and ghostwriting and all of that, and let someone else, be the face, for multiple reasons. Not really because I'm shy or
You're
anything like that.
humble. You're
Yeah,
humble and you can make more change being behind the scenes.
and to give
That's
people that opportunity though,
that's right,
because
right?
that's
Because you're
what
bringing up leaders. Yeah.
yeah, that's what's missing. Like, how are we going to have someone else, lead if they're not given that opportunity? And I was on another podcast with Obi Malopi, and that's what he said about me. He was like, since anytime, someone volunteers, you're quick to like volunteer, someone else. And I'm very big of bringing other people along. Like, shout out to my best friend in optometry, Dr. Cleaver. He knows, like, he goes on all of the wild, Pinky and the Brain, Keenan and Kel type of adventures with me, because I am that person that it's like, okay, once I've done something, I want to share it with somebody else in hopes that they share it with somebody else. And that is even something that I do in our pre-optometry club. I tell the students, like, when you get the scholarship, you apply first, but then share it with everyone, because what happens is no one can take away something that is meant for you. If it was meant for you, it's for you. If it's not, there is a reason. And I think a lot of times too, when people aren't getting certain leadership positions or jobs or the scholarship, whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, I had to teach myself that it really has nothing to do about what I'm lacking. It has more to do with my capacity, or knowing, where I'm going on the journey, or maybe that opportunity wasn't the best thing for me to get to the next step. That, really, people say, rejection is God's protection, or, just learning how to rejoice in those things
Correct.
that are not your opportunity, because that one opportunity that you're passing up behind door number 2 is even a
Even
bigger
bigger.
thing, or something else that would have
That's
fit you as
true.
well. And I think that's just what leadership is about, is showing people the way, passing it on, sharing opportunities, because there's enough for all of us, but really taking a chance. If you're a person where you're maybe not always called on, take a chance. Being a leader, my husband told me the other day, like, if you're not uncomfortable, if you're not willing, to take accountability, then you don't want to be a leader. And that is kind of the key tools to leadership: being vulnerable, being willing to communicate and collaborate with others, and really having that self-awareness, of yourself, and not being afraid to kind of be at that intersection of familiar and foreign. Like, that is where you always have to live as a leader, to want to take those big chances and some of those risks.
Yeah, you got to be held accountable. You got to take risks, and you're not going to be comfortable. There's been a lot of times over the years I wasn't comfortable, and had to deal with certain things, but I'm a planner. I always want to plan. I want to go this route, but every time I've had some rejection, the next route, the next door, like you said, was even better. So God's plan sometimes is not what you want it to be. And, I wanted to do something else in healthcare, and God told me to go be an optometrist, and I look back and I was like 21, and I was like, I would apply to one optometry school. I was like, how crazy was that? How stupid was that? But it ended up being that way. And it's been very rewarding for me. It's been very good. And talking to you, it just feels like I've known you for such a long time, because I think we think the same way.
Yeah.
And, it's great to see others in the industry doing things to better others, to promote the profession, to be, someone to look up to in the industry. And you've inspired me on this podcast. I've gotten so much like energy now to go do more. So again, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I hope others get, some inspiration from this, and whatever their goal is, and just to move forward. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Johnson, for coming on.
No, thank you so much. Thank you.